I'm fully confident in the next few months they will have a breakup.
He did essentially call into question whether or not she had the right to be angry. And now look at the way the public is responding. So many people are calling into question whether or not she had the right to be angry.
Hi, we're Julie and Kelly, and we're here to find love. Today we're getting into a Bachelorette recap of Gabby and Rachel's season 19, finale part 2. This week's episode was, let's be real, a total mess. So first we're going to talk about the Rachel and Tino breakup. People had really split opinions about what happened, so we're going to dig into that. Then jump into the Gabby and Erich engagement, Zach being the new Bachelor, and then we'll do a little retrospective about our ladies and how their season went. If you're new here, welcome. We're two dating coaches who analyze the relationship psychology and dating themes in reality TV shows.
Okay, so let's get right into the Rachel and Tino breakup after the final rose hoopla, because it was confusing. I think a lot of people were honestly split about how to react to this situation. There was a camp of people who were really, really like, Tino cheated, Tino sucks, we hate Tino, and that camp of people was very strong. But there was also a very strong camp of people that were like, Rachel was too mean, Rachel is unstable, Rachel is too angry and lashed out at him too much. And then there's a whole thing about, at the end of the fight on the stage, Aven walks out and asks Rachel out again, essentially. And I mean, I was so shocked in that moment. I literally jumped onto my couch and started screaming. I was like, what the fuck? And I think I like was excited momentarily to see Aven, and I really loved that he was there. But then like, it was so weird that Tino was just sitting on that couch like while this was all happening. And I think the show wanted it to be like a gotcha moment, or like a, you know,
it was like a knife being twisted in moment.
Yeah. And so I don't know, I think that left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. Some people loved it, and some people are like, ugh, I think it went too far.
I think it went too far. Just seeing it, I am not a Tino defender. The entire season, I have thought that he has been really villainous, a lot of red flags. But I truly believe that in a breakup, it doesn't really matter how bad someone treated you. You can always go to a higher road. You can always make the better decision. You can be the bigger person. It's more difficult to be that person when you're being hurt by someone. But I don't think that he deserved to be on TV watching his ex go with her final 2 rows and like galloping off into the sunset, and he was just on the stage. It just felt like so humiliating to me that I wanted to defend Tino in that moment. And that was the other thing. It's like, okay, the Tino incident, it was so bad the entire way through. Didn't like it, didn't like him. And then at the end, it's like, okay, it really humanized him that he is kind of a pawn in production as well. He did bad things, but production didn't do this guy any favors.
Yeah, I think that was my big issue with it, was I think the whole way through the breakup, which we'll talk about in a second, the whole way through I was like, yeah, Tino kind of sucks. Like, he
sucks.
You know, he cheated on her. And then he kind of threw her under the bus and was trying to kind of blame her for the cheating. But then I think ending that whole interaction and conversation with this weird Aven thing, this wasn't Rachel, it was production that did this. I'm sure they were like, let's throw Aven on there. Like, this will be so dramatic and juicy. For them to end it in that moment, I think that confused a lot of people, myself included, because it was kind of like, it was so harsh that it made me want to defend Tino too, even though overall I'm like, I think Tino was the jerk at the end in this breakup and was the jerk at the end of this thing. But it's like, that's the thing with like retaliation or like revenge. This was like a revenge moment, not by Rachel. It was kind of like production crafted this revenge moment for her, but it doesn't feel good. It makes you almost kind of want to defend the guy who did you wrong, which is weird. Like, I don't want to sit here and defend Tino. It confused the way people, myself included, are reacting to this whole thing.
If that didn't happen, then it would have been a lot more straightforward. People were already wanting to hop on the I hate Rachel train, and I do think that was another like nail in the coffin of, ooh, she's not a good girl. She's like a really vicious lead. She isn't a good bachelorette.
We'll leave a link to the video from last week where we talked a lot about how the internet just kind of turned on Rachel throughout this season. We had a lot to say about it, but people already disliked Rachel so much. So I do think that in this episode, part of the way people reacted to her in this season finale, in this after the final rose, part of the reason that a lot of people were so ready to turn on her in this moment, or kind of looking for a reason to turn on her, was because they were already upset. Even though, like, Tino cheated and, like, it's so cut and dry, like, he cheated on her, that was wrong, he shouldn't have done that, she had the right to be angry. But I think because Rachel is such a controversial person, it felt like a lot of the internet was kind of like, okay, but let's analyze the way she's reacting to this. Oh, she's being not, you know, quite gracious enough. She's being too mean, too mad. And so therefore, like, this is going to reinforce our previous opinion about Rachel, which is that she sucks, she's crazy, we hate her. So I do think that was kind of happening, but let's talk about the actual breakup scene that we saw in that first conversation that they were having after Rachel learned that Tino was cheating. It did feel like very much the two of them came in less, I mean, they wanted to have a conversation about what was going on, but there was so much pressure from both of them to have the conversation in this kind of coded way so that neither of them would end up coming out looking bad. It felt like they were both very conscious, right? So Tino kept leaving the room in the middle of the conversation. Like, as soon as it felt like the conversation was not going his way, he would leave the room, go outside. You heard him talking to the camera people being like, she's trying to crucify me. She's trying to make me look bad. He kept talking about, like, how he's appearing in the situation. And likewise with Rachel in the conversation, anytime he brought up something else that she had done prior to him cheating, she reacted immediately being like, why are you even bringing that up? Because it's not relevant to this conversation. Which, to be fair, she's right. It's not relevant to the conversation, which is about him cheating. And so both of them, it felt like the conversation was less productive, like far less productive than it would have been if the cameras weren't there, because it was kind of like they couldn't even get through the conversation because they both had to be like, let me correct this thing that you just said about me on national TV. I need to correct that thing that you're saying about me.
It was just kind of speaking into the fact that, like, the TV show has always been the third wheel in their relationship the entire time.
Exactly.
Like, they were so aware of the cameras being there, and both of them wanting to be like, I did this right, you can't condemn me for this happened, you bring up the receipts. It was so indicative of, like, wow, you guys don't trust each other, and now you guys are catering to the TV show. You're not even talking about the breakup anymore. It just got so confusing to watch.
Completely agree. I really like how you said that. Like, the show is the third person in any relationship that comes out of the show, but, like, production is kind of so present. It was clearly so present in the way that breakup conversation happened. They didn't address the audience, but they were basically addressing the audience. They had to keep stopping and being like, okay, by the way, the thing that he's saying, that's not true. Okay, by the way, the thing that she's saying, that's not true. There was so much of that happening that they couldn't even really get to the bottom of what they were trying to get to because they were so busy defending the perception of them to the viewers, you know? And so I think that's why it was so hard to understand what was going on, because it wasn't just the two of them talking. It was the two of them talking while also trying to kind of talk to us.
Absolutely. And another thing, too, that I thought was really interesting, it's like a problem when you're in conflict with someone, you kitchen sink, right? You're like just kind of like aggregating all of these thoughts throughout the relationship. And then in the moment of heat, it's like, okay, time to bring it out. You're saying this about me, but do you remember when you did this about me? It's such an unproductive way to move through any kind of repair, because now you're like buffering between these different arguments that should have been resolved in the past. Yes. So because they were so desperate to provide context, hey, you can't say this because you did this, right? And if we're going to be on TV, we need to roll out the entire timeline. It just became impossible for them to move forward into like, hey, what really happened in the breakdown of our relationship. It shows that the way that they communicated, the way that they resolved conflict, I mean, this was what we saw the entire season. Anytime that would happen, they would just sweep it under the rug. Let's not talk about it. We love each other so much, right? Yes. This is going to be the thing that is going to solve these problems for us, right? So now that we're seeing, okay, shit's getting real. What are you really like when you have something to say to me and I'm disagreeing with you. Yeah. They were just totally butting heads, and I wish that we got to see that this season and that Rachel really had an opportunity to stand up for her needs, advocate it, because then she would have maybe realized early on, oh my gosh, me and Tino are really incompatible and this is not something that we could work through. It's simply our communication styles and how hard do I want my life to be. And that was a hard conversation for them to move through. It just showed me like, whoa, you guys are not a fit.
Right. I thought about this during the conversation because Tino had basically said that he didn't want to tell Rachel that he cheated initially. He was like, I'm going to just forgive myself and move on.
That was so bad.
I'm going to forgive myself and try to move on from it. I don't want to bother you with this tiny issue. Like, he kept trying to like minimize what happened and then almost like find any excuse to not talk about it, which to me felt very reminiscent of what he did with the issue with his parents, when his parents had like berated Rachel when they met, when they first met her, and she was like, I'm really concerned about this, and he was like, don't worry about it, I love you. And he like kept trying to brush issues under the rug, and clearly he did it again with
this is a pattern, people pay attention.
Exactly. It's the pattern. And then even after he told her, he said that he regretted telling her and that he wished he hadn't brought it up. And it was like, what are you talking about, Tino? You had to bring this up. There was no other way. Like, you can't keep your infidelity private because she's going to find out eventually, right? It, to me, really showed that, like, ooh, he really does not know how to deal with conflict, and he will do anything that he can to just sweep it under the rug. And even in that conversation, he was like, she was like, I want to talk through it. And he was like, okay, I don't think we should get into the past. Are you going to forgive me or not? And it's like, she needs to talk through it. She's not going to just be able to decide whether or not she can forgive you without having the conversation. And so for him to be trying to kind of not listen to her anger and not let her process through it the way that she needed to, she's the one who gets to decide what repair looks like and what she needs to feel like they can move forward. But he was kind of trying to skirt through it. He was like, can you just tell me whether or not we're gonna be together after this? And it's like, she's not gonna be able to tell you that fast, man. Like, she's gonna need to talk through this. And you just, like, anytime she gets upset, getting up and walking out of the room, it's like, I kind of get why that she was so frustrated, because it felt like her anger was being seen as the problem, when in reality the problem was his behavior, right? Her anger is not an issue. Now, do I think that she should have talked to him the way that she talked to him? Do I think that would I have ever counseled a client of mine to approach the situation the way Rachel did? No, I would not. I don't think that she handled this the best way that she could in terms of the way that she was in that conversation. But do I think that she was wrong for being as angry and as unforgiving as she was? No, I think that it's okay for her to be angry. And it felt like Tino was kind of trying to get her to brush past her anger or fast forward past what she needed to do to get to the point of being okay. He was kind of trying to fast forward past it and minimize how bad his actions were to get to the point where she would forgive him. And you don't get to set the timeline for forgiveness as the perpetrator, right? She does. As the person who was harmed, she's the one who gets to set the timeline for forgiveness and what that process looks like. I don't think she should be berating him through the process, but I do think that the way that he handled that situation, it's hard to be in that situation where you just got cheated on, and then, you know, the guy then comes with a notebook full of all the bad things that you did prior to cheating. Like, he came with these receipts of like, okay, but you said this and you did that, so therefore it makes sense why I cheated. Like, it's like, what is the purpose of you telling me all these other things that I did wrong in the relationship? That is not related to what you did, which is cheating. There's no excuse for cheating. Like, there's no excuse for it. You can tell me what happened, why you were in that headspace, but it is your responsibility. You need to take accountability for it. And in the house, I really don't think he was. I think in the house he was really being self-protective, and I do think that he was kind of throwing her under the bus. In the live situation, I do think that he did try to clean up his act a little bit. I think he was trying to take accountability, and he kept slipping I think he was trying. I think he was trying to take accountability. It just, there were a few things that he said that Rachel caught, and rightfully so. Like the thing he was like, I'm sorry it came off like I was trying to blame you. It didn't come off like he was trying to blame her. He did blame her. And so I think that it's so tough. It's so nuanced because it's like he was almost there, almost able to get to where he needed to be in terms of being able to make these amends properly. But the missteps that he made, to me, it makes sense why she was as upset as he did, because he did essentially call into question whether or not she had the right to be angry. And now look at the way the public is responding. So many people are calling into question whether or not she had the right to be angry. And it's because of the way he approached the situation. He twisted the narrative to his benefit successfully. And I get why she was upset.
But this is another thing too. He's been doing it the entire season. So it's not like Tino showed a different side of himself to Rachel. Rachel chose to forgive him. She chose to overlook those things. In that moment, it was really just an unraveling of each other and how they saw each other. Like Tino was thinking, how I see you, I'm so confused on why you're treating me like this. You're typically like listening to me, or you're kind of like bending to me and accommodating to me. Mm-hmm. But in the breakup, I think we got to see Rachel as who she was as a person, not Rachel wanting to get engaged. And when you have those blockers on, I do think you kind of like, your personality is not totally who you are, because you're just wanting this goal. You want to be perceived a certain way, and you want to get certain things, which is totally fine. Everybody does this.
Right.
It just was shocking for them to be in conflict with each other and just realize, oh my God, we're really different from each other. How it sounded to me was basically like he's really slippery. It's kind of really snaky. He moves around things. He doesn't like to talk about things. He sweeps things under the rug. This is his behavior the entire season. And now Rachel is like, nope, I'm catching you. I'm seeing this. I don't like this. I don't like that. And he's like, okay, you're trying to crucify me. I don't like being punished. I don't like being exposed. And then it just became like them fighting about being incompatible versus just understanding, okay, we're just not the right fit for each other.
Right.
The way that you do your life and the way that I do my life, this is not a match. Let's stop punishing each other for these things.
Right.
Let's just move on from it.
Maybe a good question for us is, what would have been maybe the healthiest and most productive way for the two of them to have approached this situation and conflict? Like, we can criticize the different moments. There were moments where Rachel didn't do her best, and there were definitely a lot of moments where Tino did not do his best, but how could they have approached this differently?
I really do think that conflict is such a healthy part of a relationship that she should have looked out for that during the journey. So even before the final rose, she should have had a moment to, like, his parents is a fabulous example. I wouldn't have let that go. Like, hey, I see what you're saying, that your parents are really going to love me, but let's sit down and talk about it. And if we can't manage our way through this, then we're not going to be together. Yeah. And this is just how it's going to be. I don't want to say it was a mistake, but she was holding on to the idea of wanting to be with him so badly. She really let things slide until it became her reality and not like a format of the show. Right. So I wish she brought it up way, way, way before, and they would have realized incompatible before the engagement.
That's such a good point, that the earlier that you can start addressing these disagreements and conflicts, the easier it's going to be when the conflicts get huge, right? Because at the moment of Tino's family was not accepting of Rachel. I mean, that is a big deal, but that's an easier one for the two of them to handle together versus cheating. Cheating is so hard for even the healthiest couples to be able to work through that issue. So if you don't have a foundation of
and they're so bad at communication,
and
they're cheating is hard mode. You better have honest, vulnerable conversations.
Exactly. It's you needed those skills before this huge issue came up. You can't sweep things under the rug. I know that it feels easier to do this. It's so much easier to just be yeah, that was an issue, but let's not worry about it. We're so in love. I don't want to kill the mood. I want to enjoy, Mexico or wherever they were when this happened. I get it.
Mexico.
I get it. We all want to just enjoy the good feelings and for as long as possible, push off those hard conversations. But this is kind of what happens. It's then you get into a really, really hard and serious conflict that you can't skirt past, but you don't have any of the foundation laid. You don't have any of the skills, the patterns, the kind of dynamics set between you of how you want to handle conflict. You don't have any of that foundation set. And so you're going into this really, really hard conversation with no idea of how Tino is going to approach it, no idea of how Rachel is going to approach it. You're both kind of going in like feeling your way through. That's kind of why I think that conflict was so hard for them, because it felt like there was such a lack of trust. Like there was such a lack of trust between them, and that trust is built through repetition, right? When I see that we can have a conflict and get through it in a healthy way and make a repair at the end and then get back onto the same track, when I see that we can do that consistently through conflict after conflict as they happen, then when we're in this really serious mode where all I want to do is like punch you in the face because you fucking cheated on me, when I get into that zone, I can return back and remember, like, I know Tino and I know how we move through conflict, and I know that he wants the best for me and I want the best for him, and I know that we can work through this. But that foundation wasn't there. They didn't have those repetitions. And so they got into this huge issue where it's like Rachel didn't know what to expect from Tino. For all she knew, he was gonna throw her under the bus in that moment, which he kind of did. And so it makes sense to me why she reacted the way she did. But okay, in terms of how I think they should have handled the situation, they should have handled this conflict, this is really hard to do, but I always recommend, even when you're upset with someone, even when you're upset with your partner, it will always benefit you to approach them with kindness and generosity. I know this sounds so fluffy and it's like the guy cheated on you, like he doesn't deserve your kindness, but at the end of the day, no one deserves to be berated, right? I know that cheating is so awful. It feels awful. It's an awful way to treat someone. And I don't know if two wrongs don't make a right is exactly what I want to say, but Rachel coming in as strong as she did, it didn't help her case. It made her lose ground in the conversation. It made her lose ground in the court of public opinion. It made it harder for her to open her heart to Tino, to hear him out. Maybe they could have gotten to some kind of resolution. And likewise, I think with Tino, he came in essentially in this defensive stance. He came in like, I'm going to show you all the reasons why I shouldn't be blamed for what I did. Like, here's all the things that you did bad prior, and these are all the reasons why, it shouldn't be a big deal that I did what I did. And neither of them were looking out for the other person in this conversation, right? And it's the hardest thing ever to do, to look out for someone who you are upset with, to look out for someone who has hurt you. It's the hardest thing to do. But that's what a relationship is about, because in every relationship, inevitably your partner is going to hurt you. This is an inevitability. There is no relationship where your partner is not going to slip up, make a mistake, and do something that, makes you feel bad or that harms the relationship. There's no relationship where this isn't going to happen. Not that I'm saying every relationship will involve cheating, but every relationship will involve some hurts being done, and you need to figure out how to be able to work through those hurts and get to a point of repair. And the only way to do that is to be able to move through conflict with kindness. I think it's okay that Rachel had a boundary, which is, you cheated, it's done, I need to break up with you. That's okay, but the way that she approached the situation made it hard for Tino to even really understand what happened. It made it hard for the public to really understand what happened. The takeaway for me out of this is, cheating sucks, Tino sucks. Like, I do think that at the end of the day, he was at fault in this situation, but the reason that we're even having this really weird and convoluted and nuanced conversation is because the way that conflict went down, it made it hard to support Rachel, right? It made it hard to fully support Rachel in the way that this happened.
I really believe that when they had that conversation at the safe house for their happy couple weekend or whatever that event was, they both knew that they weren't going to be in a relationship with each other. And instead of them both being, hey, this relationship is not working, they both wanted to be right. And when you want to be right in a conflict, no one is ever going to win.
Yeah.
It's there are two sides to every story. Your truth and their truth may not always jive. What makes conflict really, really healthy and an opportunity for growth is when you're able to say, okay, I'm going to hold your idea of your truth in my, like, as true as my idea of my truth. And let's try to figure out this middle road. Let's build a bridge. Let's work towards it. Is this good? Is this bad? How am I accountable in this dynamic? How are you accountable in this dynamic? That was the one thing that I will say I criticized Rachel for doing. She did not want to be accountable. She was like, but I did this properly. I did this right. I did this. And it's totally valid. You could have done those things, but Tino as a partner needed certain things, and them not being able to communicate it to each other really showed, okay, you're not even able to be honest about what you really wanted out of the conversation. You didn't want this healthy breakup. You both wanted to be vindicated. You wanted to be seen by the public in a very specific way, and you guys are both not, they're both just kind of walking around it a little bit. But that was why she was so angry and people didn't like it, because it just kind of came off a little bit inauthentic, because she's so aware of her being the bachelorette. And Tino is also very aware of, okay, people do not like me on the show. If she does this, it is going to bury me. I'm going to do anything to get out of this corner that I'm in. I'm going to paint this new story. I'm going to try to cast her as like being a little bit more nebulous and gray. The show certainly didn't do any favors to that by trotting out Aven at the end when they're having such an intense conversation. They're watching it back. They're talking about it on live TV. And then Aven comes out to like cheering from the audience. And he's like, do you want to go off to the sunset, Rachel? I hated that. I just thought, oof, this is just, I don't like it. It was disturbing. Like Aven was kind of being treated as like this shortcut almost. Like you have a really bad, cheating, abusive boyfriend, just get underneath another guy and it's going to totally be okay. So I just felt like they kept trying to band-aid over a lot of Rachel's really like big traumas that she needs to work through. And another man is not going to solve that.
Exactly. I think so too. In that conversation, Tino maybe was rushing to the point where he wanted to your point, kind of talk about these other issues that were going on in the relationship that I think Rachel did need to address eventually. All these things that she had said to him that had made him feel insecure about the relationship. The thing about like, if we go back to dating, I'm gonna not wear my ring, that he clearly misunderstood and thought that she was saying that she wanted to give back her ring, period, which is, she was like, that's not what I said. I said that if we were dating, I wouldn't wear the ring. So there was like a miscommunication. There's all kinds of different little like things that he brought up that she did need to address to help meet his needs and assuage his fears. And it just felt like the wrong moment for him to be bringing all of these issues up. To your point, it was kind of like a kitchen sink moment of like, I see that we're having a big fight. Let me bring up all the other things that I'm upset about for you to address, which Rachel did need to take accountability for all of those issues. It just kind of felt, it's like really weird when I'm like, you just cheated on me and now because I'm angry, you're going to bring up all of these other things and like make me like have to address all of these other issues in our relationship when we're talking about my issue right now, which is that you cheated on me. I get why she was as upset as she was and not willing to talk about those issues at this moment. I do think that in conflict, when people try to bring up the other issues in the relationship to kind of like deflect from the thing that they did, which is what Tino was doing. He shouldn't deflect from his cheating by bringing up these other issues. I do think that a line needs to be drawn, which Rachel did, which is that I'm not going to talk about this right now. We're talking about one thing, which is cheating. Like that needs to happen. Like that conversation about cheating needs to be addressed and resolved. And then later, Rachel needs to address the things that Tino was bringing up, which was that he was feeling insecure in the relationship. He wasn't feeling okay. He was feeling like she was going to leave him. He was feeling like all of these different things that she needed to kind of let him know, like, hey, I do want to address those issues and I care about them and I want to make them right with you. I care about that a lot and I need to focus on this cheating thing first before I can even get there and talk about your issues. I do think Rachel didn't handle this situation in the best way, but part of me does really feel like Rachel kind of can't win. People wanted her to be the perfect victim before they would be willing to be on her side, right? It's like you got cheated on, but you're too mean. And so your meanness is more important than, you know, the cheating. Like, it's worse that you're such a bitch than it is that Tino cheated. And so that's the thing that I think is rubbing me the wrong way about this situation. It's like, we can talk about the way that Rachel handled the situation at the same time as talking about what Tino did, but to basically say that Rachel is the one who's in the wrong because she like was too angry. It's kind of like, they can't cry because if she cries, you're going to be upset with her too. She can't be angry. She can't be too poised like she was with Zach, because if she's too poised, people are going to say she's being fake and authentic. It's like, I don't know how she should react. I just feel for Rachel because I just don't think that she could do anything in this situation that wouldn't get the ire of America on her. What do you all think about the Rachel and Tino breakup? What do you all think about the way it went down? Leave your comments down below. We, as you know, we're always up in those comments, like wanting to have a discussion about this. We clearly have some like complex feelings about the situation, and it's so nuanced. So let's keep the conversation going. By the way, we know we have a lot of new subscribers here these days. Like, hi.
It's good to make your acquaintance.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. Like, we seriously appreciate you all so much. Not to brag, but like, I feel like we have the most interesting and insightful followers in Bachelor Nation. Like, you guys are always in the comments. You're leaving such thoughtful analysis and observations in our comments every week. Like, some of you are writing paragraphs of analysis, and seriously, I'm always like blown away by you all. I feel like I am learning new things all the time just by reading all your comments.
Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, Kelly talk about it all the time, just how insightful the community is and how much you guys engage with each other. Deeper conversations about the show. We so appreciate that.
And of course, if you are new here and you aren't subscribed, do it. Come on, join this family.
Please.
We're so having such a good time getting to know everyone. Hit that subscribe button, get in the comments. Let's do it. Let's talk it out.
All right, so next up is Gabby and Erich's engagement. I don't know how I feel about that. It was really, they had that like fake out at the beginning of the episode where Gabby seemed like she was going to walk off. Then she said, no, I really want to talk to Erich about it. And then the pacing of the relationship just developed super normally. He said, I don't want to leave without you no matter what. They got engaged. It was a cute engagement. They were both weird and quirky, like speaking to the birds. They addressed the receipts that Erich had about the person that he was seeing right before the Gabby incident. In my opinion, and I would really love to hear your take, Kelly, because you and me were just so flabbergasted watching the episode last night. I just think that Gabby is making a self-protective move. Like, whereas Rachel was like, okay, I'm going to explode on national TV. I'm going to take all of the skeletons out of the closet for me and Tino because I have to. It's kind of like the trajectory of that relationship. Gabby and Erich definitely have problems, but I don't know if they ever communicated about it or if they just came to a silent, unspoken understanding of this show's not going to take anything else. I'm not going to talk about anything else. I'm going to like, what you did was wrong. Blackface, problematic. Talking to that girl after this show, really problematic. But they don't want to continue putting their stuff out there for content for the internet to consume. So they both just kind of, in my opinion, are like, yeah, like it's fine. We're working things out, smoothing it over. And I'm fully confident in the next few months they will have a breakup, a very placid breakup, like an announcement on Instagram where they're like, oh my God, we really love each other, but it's not working out. I totally see that being their trajectory. And it just seemed to me like she was just, I mean, Dancing with the Stars was the same week as her finale. Like, I just think that she's on the show, so I just think that she is in a different headspace, and she's just not wanting to give The Bachelor anything else about her love story. She's kind of over it a little bit and making fun of the process a little bit.
Yeah, that's a really good analysis. I think you're right. I feel like Rachel was very much like, I am not going to hold back. I'm going to give you the full truth of how I feel. And
She felt right. Yeah.
I'm not going to pull punches so people are comfortable. I'm going to show you how angry I am, which I kind of appreciated, honestly. Like, she's not, like, it's so funny that people call Rachel fake. I find her to be the least fake person ever. Because clearly if she was fake, she wouldn't have, like, gone off the way that she did. She is clearly so willing to just be like, I'm mad and you're gonna know. I'm sad, you're gonna know. With Gabby, I agree. It's like she uses this like, ha, I'm goofy and I'm weird, almost to like paper over what's going on. It's like I can't tell if she's actually okay with everything that happened with Erich and this other girl, or if she
was poised.
Was just like trying to like laugh it off, kiss him a lot, and like convince everyone that everything is okay. Maybe they're talking about it behind closed doors. She did mention that Erich had brought up the text to her before they got leaked. So she did say that. So maybe they have already talked about it and everything's just okay with them. Maybe. But they kind of wanted to be like, let's address this very succinctly and move on. And so I think that my reaction is a little bit like, Gabby, like, I think you should have been probing more than you did, but maybe it's okay. I do think that the thing that she said, which was like, he was being such an asshole to her, but it's okay, I forgive him. People do this all the time, and specifically women, I see them do this all the time. They're like, yeah, he was kind of a bad boy in the past, but it's different with me because he loves me so much. He's not going to treat me this way. And it's like, what? It's like, why do you think that you're going to be any different? Like, why are you going to be any different from the way that Erich has treated women in the past?
This is a clear pattern. I mean, let's not forget that she's like Nate apologist. Like, for Nate to be like, hey, like all of these text messages coming out that he dated women seriously and just lied about his child to them. And then for Gabby to come out on Men Tell All and be like, well, Nate treated me well. Like, the way that she perceives men in their relationship to her, she's like, am I special? Am I unique? She's kind of always looking for that. Yeah. And it's not good to be in a place where you're not like pitting woman against woman, but you believe that you're elevated above them, that it wouldn't happen to you because you're more special than another girl. And that's totally not true.
It's just not true. Like, it's like wanting to believe that not only you're so special, but my relationship is so special, and our bond is so strong that it's not going to go down that way. And I think it's wishful thinking. I really do. The way people treat other people is probably eventually how they're going to treat you. The way that your guy has been interacting with other exes, the way that your guy has been, talking to his friends and family, the way that your guy talks about people that he's annoyed with, that's how he's eventually going to talk about you, right? You are not different, right? You are not this special unicorn that he's going to treat differently, just because he loves you so much, because humans are patterns of behavior. Erich even said, he was like, I was 29. I'm like, Erich, you're still 29. Like, that was just a couple months ago. Why are you acting like you're a different person? And even Gabby was like, well, like, I think he's grown a lot since then. And I'm like, in 4 months? Like, how much? Mm-hmm. How much did he grow? Did he learn about what he did wrong? Because he only just seemed to acknowledge that girl was even hurt, right? It just kind of came up now in the aftermath because she brought it up. Anyways, all I'm going to just say is that I'm questioning. I'm with you, Julia. I kind of think that I can't see this relationship really going anywhere. I'm skeptical. I'm concerned.
So me and Kelly believe that they're going to have a really well-timed breakup in the next few months. But what do you guys think? Do you believe that they're going to last? Do you feel like they're going to prove us wrong? Is there something that we're missing of their love story? Because to me, that felt like a PR statement on stage of like, we're not going to get into it and you're not going to take anything else from us. Yeah. Let us know in the comments below and let's talk. Let's move on to Zach. This was, we saw spoilers kind of about it, that he might be the Bachelor. Yeah. I didn't want it to be true. I didn't want him to be the choice. Like this 25-year-old kid that villainized a girl on TV because she happened to show a different side of her personality to a breakup. What was the thing that they were doing? America picks the first impression rose?
Yeah, America's first impression rose. Vote now!
Yeah, I was like, I'm not voting. I'm absolutely not doing this. I wish they voted for who should be the Bachelor on live TV, right? Because like when Zach came out, it's so much more exciting. I just don't think he was the right choice. I thought that Zach didn't show any accountability to how he handled the Rachel breakup.
I agree completely. Yeah. If you all want to hear about our take on the Zach situation, we'll leave a link to that video up above. But we're not fans of the way Zach went out on her season, and it really did feel like he kind of just threw her under the bus because she was having doubts, right? She had doubts about the relationship. She communicated them to him in the fantasy suites, and he was like, oh my God, she doesn't love me anymore. What a fake bitch. Like, that's kind of what happened. And
He got rewarded. He's now the Bachelor.
I
So this
know.
behavior, people are going to push like stuff like this in later seasons now.
He even kind of alluded to this. Like, my main problem on my season was people will say something, and I'm worried that they're actually just trying to say the right things and like not being real. So he's basically, it sounds like he's gonna run with this narrative that Rachel was being fake in her relationship to him. And so
Oh, they're going to talk about it. Imagine their
Right.
dates that they're going to do.
I know. So it seems like he's just going to continue to run away with this story that Rachel was faking it or like leading him on. And I'm going to try my best to give him some benefit of the doubt during his season. But the other thing too is like, no one even wanted him to be the Bachelor. Why did he get chosen? He was so boring. No one was really that interested in him. No one was that like excited by him and his personality. He was just like a kind of generic white dude, like, to be real. Like, I can't believe Jesse made that joke once Zach was announced, and then he sat down and Jesse was like, finally.
I don't like Jesse as the host.
He goes, finally a Bachelor who doesn't look exactly like me. I'm like, Jesse, I'm looking at your twin just 20 years younger. Look, that's the thing. It's like a white dude can be super mediocre and not memorable at all and will still get cast as the lead. Clayton, no one cared about Clayton on Michelle's season, and he got cast as the lead. No one cared about Zach. He got cast as the lead. But they will pick these guys that like are not fan favorites, these like generic white guys, non-fan favorites, to cast as the Bachelor before they will pick men of color who are fan favorites to be the Bachelor, right? It's like Big Mike. I know Nate is a controversial character, but a lot of people loved Nate. I would have like even appreciated it being Nate over Zach. You know, Rodney. Like, there's so many really great. Ethan. I was like, it could be Ethan. Ethan stayed on the show on these girls' seasons longer than Clayton stayed on the show in Michelle's season. So to me, I'm like, there's no reason they couldn't have chosen Ethan. Everyone loved Ethan. Baby back bitch, that was fun. Like, we loved, like, clearly he would be, like, an interesting lead. Like, I just think there are more interesting guys they can pick. And it's like, when they don't know who to pick, they will always default to a generic white guy. And that's the thing that, like, kind of irritates me.
But I also feel like the reason why Zach was picked is because he is as manipulative as Clayton. The way that he handled that Rachel situation was so problematic, was so toxic, and the way that he was like dumping on her to lift himself up. He broke up with her before she could break up with him. To me, that's just like, God, you read very young, you read very emotionally immature to me, i.e. the producers are like, perfect. This is the great lead for us to kind of monopolize, to tease, to steer. It sounds like, I'm pretty sure they're going to add new elements to a season where America might be more involved in their process.
Yeah, interesting.
It doesn't seem like they're kind of setting up that path. I think that's why he was picked, and for that very reason, I hate it. The show hasn't learned its lesson. It will be literally unwatchable his season if they don't pick a lane and decide what exactly they're going to do with him and exactly the kind of story that they want to present him with. But I think Zach is not going to be. Like, I don't like him. I don't like that we're going to do his season. I don't like that he was chosen. I don't like the direction the show is headed in. It's fine. It's harder and harder to watch it because it is so toxic.
I guess we can get into our retro on Gabby and Rachel and just their season overall. I really did think that the season and production did them dirty. Did them so dirty. Just pit them against each other, made it harder for them to really successfully get to know the guys and get to the end of their season feeling like they really knew the guys who were left. It just felt like they were really set up to fail in so many ways. Then at the end there, they wanted to cast Zach as the Bachelor, so they threw Rachel under the bus and gave her that little villain edit so that she would seem like she was being so bad to him in the fantasy suite. And like, you know, it just felt like they were like, oh, okay, well, Gabby will be happy at the end of the season so we can throw Rachel under the bus. So, like, Gabby's going to be the love story that worked out. Rachel is going to be the kind of, like, villain drama narrative of this. Like, there was so much of that. They played up so heavily on the whole am I worthy thing. Like, do these girls deserve love? Like, there was just so much bullshit, honestly, with the way their season was portrayed. And I really like both of these girls a lot. I like Gabby a lot. I like Rachel a lot. I think they both are really, really good, kind, and compassionate people who are so worthy and deserving of love. So it was just sad to see how they just kind of like took these kind of soft-hearted girls and like twisted that, like kind of just like twisted everything they could get out of them and got as much drama out of them as they could.
It's like they wanted to give them a love story, but at the same time, they saw their vulnerabilities being so exposed the entire season. And it's like the show would go on, and then you would kind of have these talking heads, right, of Rachel and Gabby being like, ooh, I don't feel very good, like, with the men choosing me. I don't feel very good being compared. And then it's like the season saw that and was like, okay, let's really expand upon this and let's really make this a point for the entire show.
Yeah, I think that is just so well said. I really do feel like the producers kind of were like, oh, so these girls are gonna have like in those first few episodes, I bet they were like, oh, these girls are like crying over how like sad they are and insecure they are, and they're clearly showing their traumas from what happened to them in Clayton season. Let's design the whole season around this. Like, let's kind of throw as much kind of BS and kind of pit them against each other to kind of recreate and like poke those wounds and kind of put them into similar situations that will provoke more crying, more of that same heartache, so we can get more of the drama. It felt like they kind of were like, they saw it and they were like, okay, let's extract it. Let's squeeze it out.
I felt like Gabby and Rachel kind of bonded over like, we are getting an engagement. It's kind of girl power. Screw these guys that didn't appreciate us. We're going to find the guy that's going to choose us wholeheartedly and get engaged to them. And that led them down a path of choosing to be with people that were really sure about them, but were really arrogant about their connection. Erich, from the jump, was mad that he didn't get the first impression rose throughout the entire season. He was upset when Gabby wasn't as into him because I think that he knew that she didn't really have a chance with the other guys because she didn't get to know them enough. She just had this one connection of Erich that she just kept working on until the end when it showed, okay, we're maybe not a good match, but we're now engaged. All of these things have happened. All of this stuff is happening around the press. I just don't want to give them anything else. Let's protect ourselves and let's go inward. That's kind of how I felt like her season went. With Rachel, I really believe that she never had an opportunity to get over the Clayton heartbreak, and that heartbreak hit her harder than it hit for Gabby. There's a reason why Gabby was a lot more lighthearted this season. She was in love with Clayton, but I don't think she thought she was going to be chosen. It wasn't going to maybe be her at the end, but she'd be like top 3, top 4, whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. But Rachel wanted to be chosen by Clayton. Rachel was the one who still wanted Clayton, even when Susie went home and Gabby wanted to like reject his rose. And then she was like, what does it say about me for me to be with a person that no one else wants to be with? Then for the breakup to happen, then for her to go on TV, for her to be compared with Gabby, for her to be with someone like Tino who is so possessive, it really did show, okay, she is a woman that's really traumatized, and I have so much sympathy for her because the way that she acted after that breakup, and that's a really bad breakup, a series of bad breakups that she's in, Zach included. Zach totally messed that one up. The way that he called her inauthentic and was kind of questioning her character. This is happening to her, and she's never had a chance to recover. I believe what happened after Clayton was she found out she was going to be the bachelorette, and very much like Aven is like, I'm just going to hinge all of my healing onto this new relationship that I'm in. I'm not going to process anything that happened. So we're seeing that, and it's really, really messy. But I have a lot of sympathy towards her, and I hope that everyone watching and the audience will kind of have that too. It was such a missed opopportunity. You and me were so excited because like you and me are best friends. We're like seeing 2 girls that are best friends. We're like, okay, this is gonna be beautiful. Didn't end up like that.
The other question that I think might be worth addressing and that I think is interesting is just how differently Rachel and Gabby were treated on this season from the point of view of production and from the point of view of the public and how the public reacted to them. I think that obviously Gabby was just this figure that everyone just adores. Most of the public seem to just love her and see her as being so relatable. And so, I mean, she's such a goofy little weirdo, so it's so easy to love her. I mean, I know I love her. I think we both like really like Gabby
Obsessed.
a lot. But whereas Gabby is like kind of like this like adored figure in Bachelor Nation, I feel like Rachel has turned into the villain, like the most hated bachelorette. She really has not been received very well at all. And it's hard to say why, because the truth is I think that they approached the situation very similarly. Like, they both cried a lot, right? They both were really sad in moments of rejection. And they both had a lot of moments where like a guy would be like, oh, I don't want to date you, I don't want to date you, I want to date her. They both had moments where that happened, or they had moments where they were like, oh, the guys aren't paying enough attention to me. Gabby had that moment in the mansion right at the very beginning of the season where she went to visit the guys, but they were all playing football and no one was talking to her, and she cried.
Oh my
over
gosh,
that.
that would have slaughtered me, Kelly.
I know. And then Rachel had that moment like where they were in the boxing date, and like she was mad at the guys, or like hurt that the guys weren't talking to her, and she cried over that. So they both kind of reacted to situations very similarly, and I think everyone was annoyed with both of them crying. But whereas people were like, oh, poor Gabby, she doesn't think she's worthy of love, but we know she's worthy of love. With Rachel, they were like, what is up with this selfish bitch? She's only focused on herself, me. That was kind of how people reacted to Rachel. And it's hard to say why. What do you think?
I have my opinions about it. I have like
Tell
a
me.
theory that could be, I'm interested to see what you think about my theory.
Tell me the theory.
Yeah, I really believe it's because Gabby just doesn't show her emotions. She is just a cool girl. She is very much like, she's very practiced. She's an NFL cheerleader, but then she was also an ICU nurse. So there's something about her personality that's really mutable and shifting. So she, I believe, played into the fantasy of being this girl that is really down, that is super chill, that is really flexible, that doesn't have these needs. But the season we got to show, it's because she believes that she can be abandoned for being who she is as a person. Rachel doesn't have that at all. Rachel, what she has is like this really big desire to be loved, and she is really emotionally truthful and honest about what she needs in moments, in breakups. She tries to, I believe, plays into the bachelorette thing, but then also, okay, how would I handle this situation? And it's kind of at conflict with each other. And whenever that conflict is displayed, we really do see her feeling inauthentic or her feeling confusing. And I say this of air quotes because if you were on TV, how would you break up with someone? You know how you would do it off camera, but how would you do it knowing that millions of people are scrutinizing your every move? And Rachel was really aware of that. Gabby protected herself from that a little bit by just not saying things out loud, by being really quiet about it. I mean, they had moments, you know, when she was like, we spoke about this off camera to Erich, and she was like, I'm really upset that you're bringing it back up. And then Rachel also had similar moments like that with Zach, but then she was like, can you please play into it a little bit so then we can have this proper breakup that I do at the top 3 rows or whatever. It just really feels like
Very interesting.
we do not like Rachel because Rachel is honest, and we love Gabby because Gabby hides things.
Yeah, that's a really shrewd point. I think that people really like people who let things roll off their shoulders, right? I think just in general, like as a culture, like maybe American culture specifically, really wants people to be like, oh, you said something hurtful to me, whatever, it doesn't affect me. Or like, oh, like this situation that's really hard happened, like, yeah, I'm hurt, but like I can make jokes, it's okay. Like people kind of want that like cool girl thing, or just like in general this quality of just being able to like roll with the punches. I think that quality is seen as desirable. It's seen as being strong. It's seen as being able to deal with your emotions well. But I don't actually think that that's what that is. I think that's the opposite of dealing with your emotions well. I think that actually what that quality is hiding how you really feel and kind of bottling it up to some extent and covering it over with a joke or with a smile or with a, you know what I mean? Like acting like something doesn't affect you as much as it truly does. And you're right. I think that's what we saw with Gabby and Erich at the end of the season of like, she was kind of like, oh, it's okay, I forgive him, he's an asshole, but whatever. Like, she was just trying to play it so cool that whole time that she was on the stage, and it did feel really crafted and rehearsed, whereas Rachel was just like letting it rip. Rachel was like, I'm pissed, and everyone's gonna know about it. Like, everyone's gonna know how I feel in this situation. And, you know, I think that quality of Rachel's is really confusing to people. I think it really does make people very uncomfortable to see someone just be like very
honest.
Straight. Yeah, just to be straight up. Like, you said something hurtful to me and it hurt me and I'm upset and I'm not going to just smile and laugh it off. I think we talked about this in a previous episode, right? People think that crying is weak, but it's not, right? Crying is not weakness, right? Crying is the strength and the honesty and the openness to be vulnerable, to let people know how you feel, and to make sure that people don't just get away with it, right? Like, not letting people get away with hurting you, letting them know, like, no, I'm not going to pretend that everything is okay. It did hurt me. Your behavior hurt me, and I'm going to be open and honest about that. And I think that people really don't like that quality, right? People do not like seeing people be upset. People say, like, people should be able to just, like, take a joke and, like, not get so easily offended or not get so easily upset by things. Like, it's like, no, like, let's be real. Like, words hurt, actions hurt, and you don't have to pretend that it doesn't hurt you. And Rachel never pretends that it doesn't hurt her. She is very, very honest. I think that's part of the reason why people were so upset by her. It's because she cried a lot and she got mad a lot, and those qualities are things that people don't want to see. They don't want to see Rachel sit there and cry over and over about the way men are treating her. They don't want to watch that.
Totally. They want to have her in a box. They want to have both of these leads in a box. And that's what we saw this season. They're just really uncomfortable with women. They're uncomfortable with emotions. It was really misogynistic. Them centering Zach is a perfect example of that. Like, why would you prop up this guy that spoke about a woman like that on national TV? Do you really want to date someone like this?
I know. It's awful.
And apparently this is what America thinks, or what the Bachelor show thinks we want to see. Right. And we don't want to see this. Like, this is kind of trash.
Right. It endorsed that narrative, right? It endorsed the narrative that Zach had, which is that Rachel is being fake, Zach was the victim in all of this, and like, they endorsed that narrative, and they're going to continue to uplift that narrative at Rachel's expense. We'll be back next week for Bachelor in Paradise. I'm actually really excited about it. I think that there's some interesting people going to the beach this summer, and so I can't wait to see, you know, Rodney and Genevieve and Aaron and all these people hitting it off. I think it's going to be a fun time. So we will be covering that starting next week. Make sure you're subscribed, and we will see you all then. Bye.
Bye.